Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are here for another episode of Raising Believers. I am your host, Sister Nusayba, and once again I'm joined by Sheikha Fatima Barakatullah and Talha. Inshallah, in this episode we're going to be discussing a few other means in which we can hope to raise strong Muslim believers. So let's start with giving our children an Islamic education. Now, it's all good and well, us as parents giving our children the right tarbiyah and etiquette and, teaching them. But what about outsourcing some of that? How important is outsourcing and how important is us giving? So give me a percentage kind of idea of how important it is.
I think when it comes to Islamic education, every parent needs to have an idea in their mind as to what they consider the baseline foundational Islamic education that every child should have. Not all of us are going to raise scholars, not all of us are going to even raise huffaz, right? But each of us can be clear, right? That each child, there's this minimum that I definitely want my child to have attained in terms of Islamic knowledge by this age. And the reason why that's important is because it doesn't just happen, automatically. You're going to have to put the effort in to arrange that. So if you're asking Nusayba, like as many people ask, what's better, Muslim school, state school, private school, what's the...
When even homeschool.
Or homeschool, sorry, I forgot the homeschoolers. I think when people ask me that, I always say, it's very simplistic to just say one or the other, because every family is different, as you've already highlighted in this series. Every single situation is different. For some people, homeschooling might be great because of their own background, because of maybe the environment they live in, the way their home is, the way they are. For other people, that might not even be an option, right? So I think every single family has to, again, sit down, talk about their vision, talk about the pros and cons of the options they actually have in front of them. And one of the things I did was I actually consider all of them options. And so I would apply to different schools, for example, and have a plan for homeschooling. And then when the time came, I would praise the istikhara and I would make the decision. Because again, each child is different as well. And what might suit one child might not suit another child. But in terms of Islamic education, you can never fully outsource it. Even if your children go to a Muslim school, as my children did, there's things that nobody's going to teach them as well as you, or in the way that you might want it to be taught. At the same time, we shouldn't be so protective over our kids that only I'm going to teach them everything, because there's other people, like alhamdulillah, sometimes I look at the teachers who've taught my children, I think, I'm so glad they had that teacher in their life, because that teacher's really into health and fitness, for example, or that teacher taught them this very special ayah, and that child wouldn't have taken it in the same way as they did from them. So I think when it comes to Arabic language, for example, as well, this generation, I feel, should not be a generation that's ignorant of the Arabic language. Because don't you feel, Talha, that like our generation, we most of us learn Arabic when we get older, right? Because our parents didn't know Arabic themselves. It wasn't that easy to learn Arabic. But once we did, we could connect with our salah in a different way, right? We could connect with the Muslim world in a different way. So imagine if we could instill that in our kids. And it's become easier now. You can get a tutor online, not very expensive. But as long as you have that vision in mind, I want my child to know Arabic, I want them to know the surah, for example, Juz Amma or 10 surahs or whatever it is for your family, you've got to have some kind of plan.
Yeah, I think, to be very pragmatic, every child who is raised in a Muslim home should know the basics, and that goes back to 5 pillars of Islam, knows what they're about. So when they are growing up, they are able to fulfill these rights, that they have upon them. And you can outsource them, in terms of the lessons can be taught by other teachers, but in terms of practical implementation has to come from you. Because Islam is not something theoretical, it's practical. They have to be able to see how you deal with zakah, how you deal with fasting. Ramadan is around the corner, and it's something that they have to see lived. Islam is not abstract. It's something that they have to see you implementing in a day-to-day life. So they can learn the theory maybe by another teacher, but they have to see it live through your example in your household.
That's a very good point.
I guess it comes down to like what you want for your child as well, and what your vision is. No doubt the basics have to come from within the home. And I think a lot of people, like you said, think that they can send their child to maybe a Muslim school or an institute and that they will do all the work for them. But it doesn't work like that.
Even with Salah, for example, like I thought that them going to a Muslim school would mean that they know every aspect of the Salah. But no, I still had to go through the Salah with them bit by bit and go through the wudu, keep checking.
But aside from that, they might learn step by step how to pray in school, but who says that they're going to carry on doing that and establish that as a part of their daily routine? So I feel like both play a part. They need the theoretics of, because if you want them to be a huffaz, they're going to need a teacher if you're not able to do that. If you want them to be alims, they're going to need, fiqh classes. So it depends on what you want. They need a bit of both.
But as for the baseline
is from parents,
they have 100%. They have to cover, the 5 pillars. Also, even if you don't want your child, or you feel that your child may not be able to become a hafiz, every child who is raised as a Muslim must know how to recite Quran accurately.
With tajweed.
With tajweed. And that's a priority. It's not good enough that we just get them to read. No, we have to fulfill that condition of that they know how to recite Surah Al-Fatiha, That's the least we can do, because that's the book by which we connect with Allah. So it has to be a priority. And I think, generally speaking, what I see in Muslim community, they do a very good job, of sending their child to the madrasa. And that's a good practice, because in madrasa, they have one thing, and that is the positive peer pressure to learn and to be competitive. And that's a good structure we have in our community.
I think the other great thing about sending your kids to madrasa or Muslim institutes is that they gain a sense of community and a sense of belonging, the village. And I think moving on to the next point, which is keeping connected to the Muslim world.
That's right.
I feel like madrasa and these kind of things really help to kind of instill that belonging in children. Do you have?
Yeah, I think that the point about keeping connected to the Muslim world is that I think our children can never forget that they're part of the ummah, the bigger, wider ummah. When the ummah feels pain, they should feel pain. When the ummah has a success, they should feel that it's a success for them. And I think one of the most powerful ways that you can instill that is to literally take them to Muslim countries. Like, I still remember as an 11-year-old, my father taking me on Umrah for the first time, right? We climbed up and went to the cave of Hira. We're making the tawaf. We're going to all the different places and just absorbing this atmosphere of, an Islamic kind of community, right? And that just had such a powerful imprint, I feel, that was more powerful than just hearing the stories. It's like you're actually there. You literally feel that, subhanAllah, this is where the Prophet walked. This is where this all happened.
You feel this sense of connection. Talking of which, on a weekly basis, don't underestimate the power of going to Jumu'ah, where you gather together. It's like the, assembly for the believers, and having that time where you can listen to the, khatib and hear about, the international community, what's happening in different parts of the world. That kind of creates a sense of compassion and a sense of connection with your wider Muslim brothers, And I think when children are introduced to spaces like that, they do realize they are part of a bigger family, and that's the notion of ummah. And for the girls, taking them to a local halaqah where you can meet other people. So going back to that sense of community, and it's the thing that you do on a continuous basis that creates the difference. And going back to that point of consistency, children, they form certain habits because of your consistent practice of doing good things. And don't belittle it, because over time you will see that these kind of acts will form their good habits. And that's what we want to instill.
You just reminded me that, you know, an important aspect is also friends, you know, I feel like we underestimate the impact of peers, you know, on our children. And sometimes people say, you know, my children don't have access to certain types of friends, you know, the sorts of friends that I would like them to have. But I think it's really important that we always stay connected with who our children's friends are. And those of them that we'd like to encourage their friendship, we invite them over. We have parties, we have gatherings where we invite the sorts of people we want our children to connect with to those gatherings, right? So that they can see that, oh, you know, I'm not the only one, for example, who takes a break for salah, or I'm not the only one who does X, or right? So I think it shows you that we as human beings are social beings. We can never be completely disconnected from either the Muslim world or our fellow believers.
Yeah, and like you said, sometimes a child might hear something from their parents 100 times, but hear it once from another person, and it really just, you know, it hits home. Inshallah, we'll stop there for a break, and then we will resume and carry on with one of the other means in which we can, you know, raise Muslim believers. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back. Carrying on from what we were talking about before, Sheikh Fatima, you wanted to mention a point about education.
Yeah, I think it's really important what Talha mentioned about the 5 pillars of Islam. I would add to that the 6 pillars of Iman. And we're not just talking about a list, you know, we're talking about our children actually appreciating and understanding what are the angels, what are, you know, the prophets. Belief in the angels, for example, is so powerful, it can completely change the way a child feels. I remember when I learned about the angels as a child, I suddenly felt a lot safer, you know, like I just had a more tawakkul, because it's like, oh, Allah's got these angels who are around me, who could protect me, who can, you know, who are writing down my deeds, all of that kind of thing. It helps build Iman. But one point that I would like to emphasize to our brothers and sisters is, I think one aspect of having a baseline Islamic education is also to ensure that every single Muslim child learns tajweed, but they learn tajweed through actually reading the Quran from beginning to end, at least once in their childhoods. Now, that might sound to a lot of parents, and it does to some parents sound like a huge task, right? But believe me, you know, they learn so much in that process, and there's so much barakah in that process. Even if they're not going to memorize the whole Quran, the fact that their lips, their tongue has uttered every single word of the Quran, first of all, by the end of it, they're going to be amazing at reading and, you know, very fluent, and their tajweed is going to be excellent. But also that sense of achievement they get. You know, have a party, make it really special for them so that they realize and they keep connected to the Book of Allah for their whole life, inshallah.
I think, you know, you mentioned beliefs. I think it's really important for children to have things to believe in. And it just hit me when you said, you know, how you felt protected and safe, and, you know, just believing in angels or something special for you. Children nowadays have Santa, have this, have that. Yeah. So I think I mean, we teach our children that these things don't exist. So it's nice for our children to have things that they can believe in as well.
Yeah. The true things.
Of course, exactly. And something that gives them purpose as well in their lives. The next means that I wanted to kind of touch upon was having open discussions with our children and actually listening to them and their needs. And it kind of ties into what you were saying about, you know, assessing all of our children's different needs and adapting our parenting and, you know, skills to their skills. So yeah, how important is listening to them?
You know, it's very important, and I think one of the things that really facilitates that, you know, discussion or that listening time is during mealtime, because it's such an informal setting and you can test and try all types of topics. Because if it doesn't go down well, you can just pass the bowl of curry or pass the bowl of rice, and the awkwardness disappears because you can always switch it to the food that you're eating. And in that way, everyone's relaxed, no one's feeling awkward, and you can have conversation up for discussion. Those conversations that you are avoiding, or those conversations you feel a bit awkward about. And it kind of creates a really intimate, open atmosphere. And that's key. Why? Because if the children are unable to express themselves at home, then where else are they going to express themselves?
And they know they have that time.
Exactly.
So
and the safety net as well.
Mind, they know they've got dinner time.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't think there should be any topic that's off, that you're not allowed to talk about. That's a taboo. Of course, there might be inappropriate times to talk about certain things, and you might say to your child, let's discuss that together later, I just remember the first time when my daughter was born, one of my sons said to me, Amma, how do we know that she's a girl? Okay, now a question like that is like really awkward, but it shouldn't be. At the end of the day, our children are human beings who are trying to figure out what's happening in the world. What is this world? What is the nature of this world? Who's right and who's wrong? And how should I be thinking about this world? If we don't provide a safe space for them to come and talk to us and us explain things, it doesn't mean we have to go biological. We can explain things in simple ways. Boys and girls' bodies are different. We can just say something simple like that. But what I mean is
age appropriateness is important,
yes,
isn't it?
Of course, age appropriate. Give them an age appropriate answer. But what you're not doing is shutting them down. You see.
Or sometimes, as busy moms, they will ask you a question when you're about to put them to sleep and you're thinking, not now. So you can say, look, that's a very good question. We can talk about it tomorrow. And in the meantime, you can prepare yourself, because sometimes
Yes.
you're thinking, I don't even know what to say from an Islamic perspective. So you bought yourself some time, but don't shut them down, like Fatima was saying, because that is a area where you can really, inspire them or clarify matters and really feed them well, so that they are able to understand what is going on, or feed into their curiosity, because curiosity is a good thing, because that is showing they're interested, they want to learn, they want to understand, and this is a very good thing. So use it to your advantage again. And sometimes it could be that you don't know about the topic that they're asking you. Say to them, I don't know, but I can find out for you, because they need to see that parents also are learning. And that's a positive way to show that there's no end to learning. Just like they're learning, we're learning as well.
I think also it's also important for us as parents to prompt certain conversations as well.
Yes,
instead
exactly.
of waiting for them to come to us. And there are, intimate discussions and subjects that we might not feel are necessarily age appropriate or we don't want to have with our children. But again, living in the context and the culture that we do, there are certain things that regardless of whether we talk to them about it, they're going to find out. Exactly. And they're going to learn at school, and they're going to learn from their friends from a very young age. And I think a lot of parents would actually be very surprised to know at what age children are hearing things. So I always think if we're open with our children, we have these conversations first with them, at least we can teach them from the right perspective. At least we can give them the right, understanding of whatever they want to ask.
It's so true. Just yesterday, I was having a conversation with my son. He's 17 now, so I was saying that it's so important in our community to talk about the gender interaction, especially if the boys and the girls have been going to mixed school, or if they've had homeschool education, or if they've gone to gender specific, so boys only school. And I was saying it's so important to create that discussion, because he had his friends over to my house, so I was speaking to not only him, his friends as well, as I was serving the food. And I was saying that our young people, they need guidance how to navigate through that journey of dealing with opposite gender in a respectful way. And I was saying that there's no harm in speaking to the opposite gender, but you have to be to the point, and it has to be a conversation with respect and to the formality. Yeah. And as long as you cover yourself in that respect, then that's fine. And it's important that they also know their boundaries, so that they can stick within their boundary and they can operate in a comfortable, confident, articulate way without causing distraction to themselves or anyone else. So I think those kind of conversation, it's not very encouraged in the community because of awkwardness, but it's very necessary.
Yeah, because what you're doing is you're paving the way for then, when they're older, when they do have something very sensitive that they need to talk to you about, when they're about to do something maybe that, you know, is dangerous or difficult, or they feel comfortable to come to you.
Yeah.
Because you didn't shut them there when they were younger. There were no topics that were off topic, you know, that were taboo. In my family, now that they're older, we have a family halaqah every week. And in that halaqah, we can actually talk about difficult things. So we've been actually going through the 70 Major Sins book. And that might sound like a bit of a scary topic, but my son's actually really appreciating it, because the things that are coming up, those are the things we want them to be aware of, our dangers, right? But we get to have a whole conversation about each of those. They get to share their thoughts, maybe some misconceptions they have. And that then it ends up being a very healthy conversation, helps them have a healthy outlook.
Or right kind of attitude as well. There's another conversation that we recently had was in their school. There's a discussion on being grateful, how gratitude is so good for mental health, and you know how it's really good quality to cultivate. So then we started talking about how in our deen, being thankful is so encouraged, and Allah Azza wa Jalla loves hamd. And it was really interesting because we were saying that, okay, when you're grateful to someone, then you have to acknowledge that, being that you're grateful to, not just being grateful for the fact that you've got good listening and good hearing, but who are you grateful to? So it was a bit of a deep discussion. So we were saying that how in our deen, we know exactly who we are grateful to, and that is our Creator. So we say, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, because certain things, I think the society is catching on, being grateful, having that sense of gratitude. But our deen gives us that clear guidance. Who are we being grateful to, So I think discussion brings about so many deeper, points that otherwise you would miss.
Even things like hijab, we're quick to tell our daughters about hijab, like wearing it, but do they know why? Do they understand? And sometimes they have questions like, how come auntie so-and-so doesn't wear hijab, and we do?
Yeah.
Or how come so-and-so do this and we don't? Or, it's really important to be able to, without demonizing anyone, to be able to explain, look, this is a command of Allah. Not everyone obeys Allah, or not everyone is at the level, or maybe they're going through their own journey. Allah's going to ask us, isn't it? He's going to ask us about what we're doing. So that's why we want to be able to stand in front of Allah and say that we did our best, we obeyed Him. For example, right? Another example, my son was recently asking me, Amma, what qualities were you looking for in a husband when, when you were looking to get married? I was thinking, okay, that's a good question, because now I get to tell him the things I think he should have, the qualities I think that he should have.
And I guess having these discussions with our children, it gives them the equipment to then answer other people, maybe their peers, maybe
Definitely,
their friends.
yes.
And it gives them a little bit of a confidence boost that they know why they're doing things. And ultimately, when you know why you're doing something, you're going to do it better.
Yeah.
Again, Jazakallah khair for joining me for another episode. Jazakallah khair for joining us, viewers. And inshallah, we will see you soon on the next episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.